Hi, I'm Laura Wasilowski. Welcome to part 2 of how to make the Birds and Flowers quilt from the Chicago School of Fusing. Okay. So we've already made our components. We've made our flowers and our birds and our leaves, but we also want to make our woven collage down here for the little nest. And we'll also talk about this curvy edge that goes around the edge of the quilt. This is called a wrapped binding, and I'll show you how to prepare the quilt for that as well. There's my components. They're all fuse tacked onto release paper, flowers, birds, and my leaves and stems. And now I want to make my nest. And this is what I do. I take 2 pieces of fused fabric, there's the glue, and I cut squares like that. 2 different colors of fused fabrics. I'll cut them from corner to corner like this. Cut them on the bias. Remember, the bias is a 45-degree angle of to the grain of the fabric like that. Once they're cut, I'll be cutting a bunch of strips. They're about, 1/4 of an inch wide like that. I'm going to cut out a whole bunch of strips out of both fabrics, and I'll weave with those. Here's my weaving right here. I've got my warp going down like that. I flipped them up already, and there's my bias cut strips. The best part about a bias cut strip is it doesn't fray. There's my little strips, and I'm going to weave across by taking my bias cut strips and dropping them underneath the warp just like that. So every other one is lifted up. Oh my gosh, I think I made a mistake here. Let's drop that down. You get the idea. Anyway, you're going to end up weaving these strips all down on the release paper. You iron as you go. You end up with a woven collage that looks something like this. There's my woven collage. Isn't that pretty? Now, once it's woven, all I really need to do then is to take that woven collage and to cut it into a nest shape like this. There's my nest, and now I can start putting everything together on my background fabrics. Here's my background fabric. There's the sky. The sky fabric has been cut with a decorative rotary cutter blade like that. Then I go back and I get my components that I've made up already. Here's my little nest for my bird to sit in. There's the nest. I find my birds, I peel them off the paper, and there's one up in the sky. Here she is. She's going to sit down in the nest. We'll put her just underneath. We'll put her into place, and of course we take a piece of release paper and tack everybody into place with our hot iron. Then I can add some flowers. There's a flower. We'll add more flowers all around the birds. And to connect the flowers to the ground, of course, I need my bias cut stems. There's my bias cut stem. To add my stems, what I do is I just tuck it just underneath that flower, just underneath, and as I fuse it with my hot iron, I'll fuse it and I'll make it move, just like that with my hands. So I'll be ironing down the stem. That's what's neat about a bias cut fabric, is that it will bend as you fuse it. I'll clip it off there, and then I'll take some of the leaves after I've clipped off my stems, and I'll drop them down as well. And I end up with my composition that looks something like this when I'm done. But before I do any of the stitching or any of the machine work, I have to steam set my composition onto the batting. And here is an example over here of a quilt that I have in progress. Here's my little quilt, and he's ready for steaming. There's a little quilt, and to steam it onto the batting, what I need is batting, of course, and there's Timtex. The Timtex is what's going to give that quilt the shape. Timtex is a really stiff interfacing. I'll cut out my Timtex about a 1/2 inch smaller all the way around and the size of the quilt top. I want to make sure that the non-scrim side is up. Scrim is a little low, network of plastic or something that's on some battings. And if you fuse to that scrim side, you may end up with a rippled quilt. So make sure you steam to the non-scrim side so you get a nice flat quilt. I've rough cut it a little bit smaller like that. And then I'm going to take my quilt, my batting, and I'm going to go over to the mat and I'm going to cut out these wavy edges. I'll put it down onto the mat. I'll take my rotary cutter blade and I'll cut in and out and in and out like that to make a wavy edge. Once that's done, I take the quilt. Here's another little quilt I'm working on. Put it down, and you see there's all this area around there like that I can wrap around. And I've marked where the batting and the Timtex match up. And then the next step would be to make a wrapped binding. And I'll show you that next time.
Well, thanks, Laura. That was great as usual.
Thank you, Frida. One thing I should mention is you always steam set this glue to the batting, and then once you steam set it, you can do all the hand stitching you want on top.
And you're going to show us that next time, right?
Yep, that'll
Okay.
be fun.
See you then.